A man is not truly broken when his bones snap. He is not undone when the blood spills, nor when the lungs collapse, nor even when the breath ceases. A man breaks long before the world sees it, when the silence within him starts to crack, when belief flickers and memory turns from comfort into torment. Guy Fawkes, the face we burn into memory every 5th of November, knew this better than most. His death was not slow because of the minutes it took to crush his body. His death was slow because of how long it took to erase what he once stood for, to peel his soul from the skin, to convert conviction into shame. He was not just executed, he was dismantled. We remember his mask, we forget his face. The world knows him as a villain, a symbol, a stylized outline with a mustache and a smirk. But behind that symbol was a man, flesh and nerves and longing. He was born not to fire, but to faith. Guy Fawkes was raised in a world where religion had ceased to be a matter of God and become instead the architecture of power. England in the late 16th century was not merely Protestant, it was militantly Protestant, under a monarch whose legitimacy was tied to the obliteration of Rome's grip. In that crucible, young Guy came of age, baptized into a world where mass was treason and sacred rites were punishable by death. York, his birthplace, was still riddled with recusant Catholics, those who dared defy the state religion by secretly adhering to their ancestral faith. Guy's family, though once comfortably Protestant in public standing, bore Catholic bloodlines through his mother. After his father died when Guy was 8, his mother remarried into the Bainbridge family. Staunch Catholics, with ties to some of the most militant underground networks in the North. And it was in their shadow that the boy began to change. He was educated at St. Peter's School, where his classmates included future co-conspirators. It was a quiet school with loud implications. Funded by Catholic sympathizers, it quietly seeded sedition under the guise of grammar and Greek. Faith, for Guy, was not a thing of whispers. It was not to be hidden in basements, not to be rationed between state inspections. He longed for a church that roared, that stood tall, that wielded the sword as easily as the chalice. And so, when England offered only silence, Guy left. He crossed the Channel to Flanders, where Catholic Spain was waging war on behalf of the faith. There, Guy Fawkes became Guido Fawkes, the anglicized soldier, reborn as a continental warrior. He joined the Spanish army in the Netherlands and fought under the banner of King Philip II, battling the Protestant Dutch rebels. It was there that he learned the language of steel, of discipline, of gunpowder. In war, he found clarity. In Catholic militarism, he found meaning. But what Guy didn't find was help. Despite his service, when he later tried to persuade Spanish leaders to support a Catholic uprising in England, he was rebuffed. Spain was cautious. Diplomacy outweighed zeal. And so Guy returned not with an army, but with a plan. A desperate, incendiary plan that would remake England in fire. He was recruited into the Gunpowder Plot by Robert Catesby, a man whose grief had hardened into resolve after years of watching Catholicism suffocate under royal boot. Catesby was charismatic, devout, and lethal, a man who didn't just believe in martyrdom, but was ready to manufacture it. Together with a small group of disillusioned men, they formed the most infamous conspiracy in British history. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Blow up the House of Lords during the state opening of Parliament on November 5, 1605. In one apocalyptic instant, the entire Protestant political order, king, lords, bishops, would be annihilated. From the ashes, a Catholic monarch could be installed. And at the heart of it all was Guy Fawkes, the soldier, the technician, the keeper of the powder. He was not the mastermind. He was the spark. They rented a cellar beneath the Parliament building. There, over months, they stockpiled barrels of gunpowder, wrapped in firewood, hidden beneath coals. Guy watched over it all, patient, calm, devout. He was chosen for this role not just because of his military expertise, but because of his composure. He could be trusted. He did not flinch, but the plan unraveled, as all plans born of desperation tend to do. An anonymous letter, its source still debated, warned a Catholic lord to stay away from Parliament. The warning raised suspicion. The cellars were searched, and in the early hours of November 5, Guy Fawkes was found, standing alone among the barrels, calmly holding matches. He did not fight. He did not flee. He looked the guards in the eye and said his name was John Johnson, a pseudonym both absurd and unashamed. He was taken, but not broken, not yet. In that moment, history did not kill Guy Fawkes. It captured him. What came next was not execution. It was unraveling. They took him to the Tower of London, the place where voices go to disappear. In its stone belly, beneath the damp echo of history, the real work began. His interrogators wanted more than names. They wanted erasure. They wanted the plot to become a ghost story, its edges blurred, its memory shattered by confession and contradiction. But Fawkes, at first, refused. For 2 days he remained silent. They brought him before King James I himself, who noted in his journal that the man possessed a Roman resolution. The compliment, if it was one, would not last. On November 6th, the torture began. In theory, torture was illegal in England without royal permission. In practice, permission was always granted when the stakes were high enough. Fawkes was subjected to the rack, a device that tears joints from sockets, that lengthens a man until his body forgets itself. They stretched him until his shoulders dislocated, until his hips cracked, until every breath cost more than a scream. They shattered his handwriting. The man who once signed letters in flowing Latin ink was now reduced to a scribble. His forced confessions are still preserved in the archives, his name written like a child's attempt, half-formed, trembling, barely legible. His body could no longer obey his mind. That was the point. But even under torture, Guy never betrayed all. He admitted the existence of the plot. He named some, but he kept others shielded, offering partial truths cloaked in exhaustion. He still believed, even in agony, that martyrdom might salvage meaning. He was wrong. The state didn't want a martyr, they wanted a warning. And so began the performance. The trial was swift, a formality dressed in the robes of justice. Fawkes was sentenced to be hanged, drawn, and quartered, a death so elaborate in its horror that it ensured no rebel could ever embrace it with dignity. But the public didn't want justice. They wanted spectacle. On January 31st, 1606, Guy Fawkes was dragged through the streets of London on a wooden sled, tied face up, his mangled body paraded before a jeering crowd. They threw refuse at him. They spat. They laughed. This was not punishment. It was theater. At the gallows, he stood among the condemned, barely able to climb the steps. He was skeletal, broken, hollowed by pain and days of starvation. But still, he stood. He looked out at the crowd, and for one brief instant, there was silence. And then, before the rope could claim him, he jumped. Whether it was defiance or desperation, Guy Fawkes leapt from the platform, snapping his own neck in the fall. He died instantly. The executioners, denied their drawn-out performance, proceeded with the sentence anyway. His body was disemboweled, beheaded, and quartered post-mortem. They scattered the pieces. His head was displayed on a pike. his limbs sent to the corners of the realm. The message was clear: even in death, a rebel's body does not belong to itself. But the irony was bitter, because in trying to erase him, they immortalized him. Guy Fawkes, the man, was forgotten. But Guy Fawkes, the mask, became legend. He was reborn in pamphlets, in whispered tales, in the smoke of bonfires and the laughter of children burning effigies. They taught generations to fear him, and in doing so, they taught generations to remember. But what they remembered was not the man. They remembered the caricature, the smirking face, the flame. They remembered what he became, not who he was. And so, Guy Fawkes did not die on January 31st, 1606. He did not die in the Tower. He did not die when the rope took his breath. His death was slower, more insidious. He died each year that his story was simplified. He died when rebellion was turned into fireworks. He died when belief was painted as madness. He died when the symbol outlived the soul. Death has a face, but sometimes it wears a mask. After the limbs of Guy Fawkes were scattered and the smoke of justice had settled, England was left with a question. What does one do with a ghost that refuses to die? You don't erase him, you repurpose him. Because true domination isn't killing the man, it's owning the memory. And so, the Crown turned its most dangerous traitor into a tool. They crafted a holiday, not of mourning, but of warning. They didn't bury Guy Fawkes, they resurrected him as an annual ritual of obedience. Remember the 5th of November. It sounds like folklore. It smells like smoke and cider. But it was always a lesson, carved into calendar stone by fear and fire. Bonfire Night, a festival built from a failed revolution. It wasn't made to honor Fawkes, it was made to burn him, again and again, in front of every child, every priest, every would-be conspirator. His image was turned into an effigy, stuffed with straw, lit like kindling. Towns gathered to laugh as the traitor burned. But what were they really burning? A body long gone? Or an idea still smoldering? Because here lies the paradox of power. When you make a man into a monster, you teach people to fear him. But when you repeat that monster's name for 400 years, you teach them to remember. And memory is where rebellion begins. The irony deepened over centuries. The more the Empire tried to frame Guy Fawkes as a failed villain, the more he became something else, not a hero, but a question, a crack in the wall of history, a reminder that somewhere, once, a man lit a match beneath a throne. The image changed, the context mutated, and then came the mask. Kennelly, in the 1980s, an artist's pen reshaped his face into a grin. Curved mustache, sharpened cheekbones, arched brows. It was no longer Guy Fawkes. It was an idea of him, filtered through fiction. In V for Vendetta, the man became myth, again. A masked avenger, articulate and explosive, fighting tyranny with the language of spectacle. The mask, once a cautionary tale, had become a call sign. It spread, first to comic book pages, then to cinema, then to the streets. Occupy. Anonymous. Protesters across continents, wearing not their own faces, but his. Not Guy Fawkes, but what he represents. Resistance, detonation, doubt. What the Empire never understood, and perhaps still doesn't, is that you cannot burn a symbol without giving it oxygen. Every time they threw his effigy into the fire, they taught people that fear can be kindled, but so can memory. The story of Guy Fawkes was never about gunpowder, it was about belief. A man believed so fully in his cause that he was willing to die. Not instantly, not painlessly, but in pieces, slowly, spectacularly. He believed enough to risk dismemberment, to die with his eyes open, to fall into the silence between breath and scream. And when a man dies like that, he is never truly gone. He is simply waiting for someone to remember him correctly.
Not as a smirking mask, not as a child's chant, but as a man who stood in the dark with a match in his hand, staring up at a building filled with power, and whispered, "Let it burn."